Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo. I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to our Lakers Rockets playoff series preview. This is my favorite episode of the year. Love doing these annual playoff previews with Cranjis, aka Tim, or you can reverse that. Tim, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Jovan. I am ready to break the streak that I have on this podcast of picking the wrong outcome in the first round series. Yeah, I that might be it. Fool me once, fool me twice. We'll see if I fall for it a third time.
We will see at the end. So, quick overview here. We are going to be doing we're going to set the stage with the regular season numbers for both teams, the post All-Star break numbers, because there were some shifts there, and then the season series numbers for the teams. Then we'll be going into one question for the Lakers, one question for the Rockets, a Lakers player X factor, a Rockets player X factor, a statistical X factor for the series, a series X factor overall, and then any additional points, notes, stats we didn't hit on. And then finally, we will make our series prediction. So first and foremost, Tim, I want to start with this. This might be the most difficult time I've ever had trying to predict a series since I've been doing this, just because there are so many unknown variables here of right now. What we know is that Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves are both out indefinitely per JJ Redick. There will not be an update this week, but looking at their respective injuries and the timelines and the schedule that just released last night, there is a chance that if either one of them could be on the early side of their projected timetables, they could potentially be returning game 4, game 5, maybe. And if LA is down 2-1 or it's tied 2-2, that could give LA the boost to win this series. But I don't know how we factor that in. And I don't know how we analyze this, because I rewatched all 3 games and the Lakers had Austin, Luka, and LeBron in all 3 games. And so just going into this series, how have you been preparing for it? How have you been thinking about it? And how are you ultimately settling with your analysis?
It's definitely been the most challenging of any of these we've done. You're missing such key pieces. And I think the first thing I did was, with all of the tracking I do of every possession of every Lakers game, I've got a lot of information regarding how do they try to play offense. And so the first thing I did was take a look at these recent games, post All-Star break, with only LeBron out there for the game. How did the team operate? How was it different? And they used different alignments. They used horns a whole lot more. They used 4-out-1 in a whole lot less. They used different series of plays. They did use different set plays. They were primarily an off-ball screen team with the plays they were running instead of a ball screen team. And so trying to understand how stylistically LA offensively is different as well as defensively, and then trying to figure out, okay, how does Houston attack that kind of defense? How does Houston defend that kind of offense? And it's a lot of hypotheticals on hypotheticals, and so we'll ultimately end up seeing. But I think this year I tried to be more prepared for, if Houston does X, what would LA do? If Houston does Y, what would LA do? If Houston does Z, what would LA do? Because I think a year ago I looked at all the breadcrumbs for how Minnesota played LA in the regular season, how they played Luka in the regular season, how they played Luka in the past playoffs, and I took that and ran with it. And then when they showed up in game 1 doing something different, I certainly wasn't as prepared, and the Lakers weren't either, with them running hedge beaters. I know the first 5 plays of the game 1 they ran were hedge beating plays, and that's what I was ready for, and that's not what Minnesota was doing. So I hope I and they have learned that lesson and are ready for the unknown. But I guess one thing I do know is LeBron is going to have a heavy load in the series.
Let's get into some of the numbers here. So I'm going to share. Did some nice Google Sheets here, so some high level statistical analysis. But let's start with the regular season. So the Lakers and the Rockets. Lakers finish 53-29. Rockets go 52-30. Expected win-loss. I thought this was interesting. Lakers beat their expected win-loss by about 6 games. Rockets actually underachieved by about 4 games. But overall, Lakers top 10 offense, bottom 10 defense, or bottom 11 technically, 14th in net. Rockets were top 10 on both sides of the ball. And there's some clear trends here where the Lakers were an elite offense, whether it was effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, decent rebounding team, not like a great rebounding team, but somewhere between solid to good. But they were below average in turnover percentage, don't offensive rebound, and are on the slower side pace-wise. While the Rockets were top 10 on both sides of the ball, they clearly struggle from a shooting efficiency perspective. And I thought it was funny today at practice, Rui referenced that kind of where he's like, they have a lot of shooters that are missing shots and their offense is just going to get the offensive rebound. And you see that reflected in that monster offensive rebound percentage number of 38.8. They led the league in rebounding. They had a historic offensive rebound percentage, and then they struggle with turnovers and they play on the slower side. If you look at post All-Star break, there's some improvement for both teams. Lakers went 20-8, which was a 58 win expected win loss. Rockets went 19-10. They were also had a 58-24 expected win loss. But Lakers improved on both sides of the ball, and the shooting efficiency was right there, number 2 again behind Denver. But the rebounding slipped, and that's going to be something that we touch on during the show. Is despite LA improving defensively, they did not rebound the ball well to close the season, and that is a concern of mine. Now with Houston, we actually saw an uptick in their shooting, and they started to shoot the ball better, and still were dominant on the glass. Not quite as dominant, but still great, and still struggled with turnovers and pace. Now we get into the season series here, where LA won 2-1. Despite that, they had a negative net rating because of the Christmas game. And then if we're looking at these ratings here, LA below average on both sides of the ball. Houston good offensively, little subpar defensively. But the couple things stand out here. But with the shooting, like LA shot the ball well and pretty much on par with their season-long numbers. But they got slaughtered on the glass on both sides of the ball. And Houston just blew them. Like, I mean, it's almost 14 more rebounds per game. But that offensive rebound percentage of nearly 47% is mind-blowing, and that's going to be a huge factor in this series. So looking at this or anything else with the season-long numbers, is there anything that stands out that you think is really going to dictate this matchup without spoiling what we're going to get into later?
I think the rebounding certainly stands out. I think Houston was at 38.8% offensive rebound percentage for the season. The best ever is 39.1. So they are really close to being the most dominant offensive rebounding team, and they've been about just as good without Steven Adams, which really stood out to me. I knew he was a big piece of it, but it's a credit to them and the depth of their rebounding that they've been able to get to that number. And playoffs are different from the regular season. You prepare differently. You make all the winning plays. You take the charges. You box out. And LA's going to need to do those things because on paper it looks like Houston is really going to win the possession battle, and the Lakers are going to have to outplay them when it comes to like the possession quality battle. One thing I did notice in looking at the numbers I look at over at BBall Index, we have a new tool. It's not out just yet, but using our luck adjusted data. We have player values and team values. We've created standings of if you plug in the expected, point production for each team instead of the actuals for every game, you can see, how things compare. Lakers have been one of the best teams in the NBA post All-Star break. Obviously not the same with Luka and Austin out. But what stood out to me was Houston is 6 wins above their expected number just post All-Star break. Just since Steven Adams went down, which is mid-January. And their expected defensive rating over that stretch is 18th best. It was a big drop. So they have a really good raw defensive rating, but the expected numbers are way, way lower. The math thinks they're kind of fake in that regard, and opponents have just missed shots they're normally ready to take and good at taking, even adjusting for the shot quality and adjusting for the shooter. So I found that to be intriguing, and when I dug into the film, I don't know if that shaped the way I was looking at things, but it didn't end up being as scary of a defense as what I thought it was going to be, but the rebounding definitely is scary to me.
Yes, I finished my rewatch last night of the season series, and that was something that really stood out. Again, that number right there, they're rebounding nearly half of their misses, and that's what it felt like on film. But let's get into the series specific questions here. So what is your question for the Lakers?
So for me, this one was interesting. I think it really comes down to like, can the tiger change its stripes? If that's the right, did I use the right? I think that's the right phrase. Yeah, good enough. The Lakers have a very clear identity on defense. They switch more than anybody. They are defending the rim, not by like defending it once you get there, but trying to keep you away from it, deploying help into gaps, trying to make driving hard, and drawing offensive fouls if you try to drive through that help. Lots of switching, almost no drop, almost no hedging, not much drop. And the thing is, Houston's really good against that. And the type of help LA uses to support when they switch, and this isn't like OKC or some of these other good switching teams where they just have really strong on-ball defenders top to bottom. LA's got some weak on-ball defenders, and the way that they try to support that is by sending extra help. It's not usually hard double teams. It's more of a soft help, get in the way, force teams to settle on jumpers and not drive. But it's passive in that because there's no hard double, it gives the offense time to try to pick it apart and cut. And Houston is also really good against that. So that to me stood out. Can LA swap what they normally do, which has been very, very homogenous, and kind of switch and play more to Houston's weaknesses rather than just LA's strengths? When I look at Houston's success this season in games, they played opponents that switched more than 30% of ball screens, and I picked 30% because that's like a league average number pretty much. They played 27 games where they faced switch-heavy defenses. They only lost 5 of them. They had an 81% win rate. And of those 5 losses, The Lakers were 2 of them. So that's encouraging, but that's with Austin, that's with Luka. This isn't that same team. And when I look at Houston's offense in those games versus non like switching teams, their post-up attack is so much better. 16 offensive rating points higher. KD's ISO game rises 11 offensive rating points. His post game rises from 0.9 points per possession to 1.37. Şengün goes from mediocre efficiency as an ISO guy and a post guy to strong in each. And Houston is a better offensive rebounding team, as you might expect, because you get mismatches through the switches and they can really impose their size. So they are at their best playing the kind of defense the Lakers like to play. And to me, that is very worrisome. And even the kind of help LA uses to support that switching is what Houston is best at attacking. They don't attack strong doubles as well. It's more the soft help. They do a really good job cutting behind it and getting guys slashing to the rim. So can LA switch what they do? If they were looking at different options, drop is where Houston has been most beatable. They are winning just 48% of their games when opponents drop at least a third of ball screens. They win 70% of their games when opponents aren't dropping heavily. They get 5% fewer offensive rebounds against drop-heavy opponents. That makes sense. The other team centers by the rim. Their ISO attack is straight up bad. Their post-up attack, bad. Şengün's 1v1 game, not effective. KD's is much worse. Their ball screen attack is much worse. Even though they've got some good pull-up three-point shooters, their spot-up shooters aren't able to attack closeouts because their guys don't need to leave them if you're playing ball screens 2v2. So if LA can move towards more of a drop defense, which they don't want to do, we might be able to see Houston play more at their worst instead of their best. And if you are switching, as we see on the screen here, this is Kevin Durant's quick view report card from his player profile over at BBall Index. He's very good. There are a lot of A+ here. I would put this one on the refrigerator.
I like the random F in there for the shot quality, but then everything else is an A+.
Yeah, he's incredible. It was interesting researching KD and understanding like, all right, which direction you want to shade him and what kind of help do you want to send? What are his post tendencies? Things like that. But I was looking at like his efficiency at the rim compared to from mid range is basically the same. Like a mid range shot is a layup to him. Not in that he's shooting 80% on both, but he's shooting like 48% on both or something like that. He is a tough guard, and I think who LA chooses to guard him with will be really important. And if they're switching, he's going to be able to pick and choose.
How would you start with the defensive matchups? It seems like the Lakers are going to go DA, LeBron, Rui, Luke, and Marcus. And then would you go drop against Shepherd, KD, and Thompson as the primary ball handlers, or would you mix that up depending on who has the ball?
If you can mix it up based on who has the ball, well, I am so KD and Shepherd are good pull-up three-point shooters. Shepherd, he has a better pull-up three-point percentage than any of LA's big three, and he also shoots a higher frequency of threes than any of LA's big three on pull-ups. He's shooting like 39% in ball screen pull-up threes, and it's like 40% of his shots. But even with him individually being good, and that being kind of high variance, which maybe you want to play into as LA, as a team, Houston's not as effective. KD, same thing. He's good. Team's not as good. Thompson, I mean, I'd be going under his ball screens and dropping as well. So I would try to take advantage of Thompson's lack of shooting wherever possible in every facet of this game plan. But I think you kind of grit your teeth, live with KD and Shepherd hitting some pull-up threes, hoping that maybe they have a bad shooting night and go 2 for 7 instead of 4 for 7 on those. But you aren't allowing the rolls. You're not allowing the ISO. You're not allowing the post-ups. You're not allowing the spot-up guys to get anything going, and you're going to be able to rebound defensively. So if I can hold them to one pull-up three, hopefully against, Marcus Smart or somebody navigating well around a screen and getting some sort of side contest, and that's it, and that's their only shot, I'll live with it if I'm LA.
Yeah, it stood out on film the ways that they could attack the switching. Like there was one possession in the third game in Houston where they just switched Luke Kennard onto Şengün at the nail, and it was a quick spin move, elbow through Kennard's chest, and he powered through and dunked it, not like directly on Rui, but kind of to the side of Rui. And it was like, oh yeah, if you're just switching Luke Kennard onto KD or Alperen Şengün, like you have to be proactive with the help there, and it has to be immediate. Otherwise, like with KD, a game that I think we've even discussed in the past, but I constantly reference is that game early in the season, last season, when the Lakers were playing the Suns, and they just kept switching Gabe Vincent onto Kevin Durant at the end of the game, and KD had like 6 points and 2 or 3 assists, and the Suns had a comeback win. And a big thing was just he kept pulling up over Gabe Vincent, or the Lakers would like aggressively shade over, and then that allowed kick out passes or passes to cutters. And there's got to be careful with that, because I know like this is, to your point, been like how they've attacked things defensively all season. But if they're going to be, especially if they're leading into a more offensive starting group, which is going to be something I touch on a little bit later, because I don't really agree with this approach. They're going to have to get creative with the defense. And I think we'll see some zone to some degree. I wouldn't mind that. But if they are going to be switching everything, they have to be ready to counter with, like, I just don't think that's the best strategy against this team.
Yeah, and Houston's comfortable playing deep into the shot clock. They are one of the highest frequency, like late clock shooting teams. And with how they offensively rebound, like they're comfortable there. You want to force the issue. You want to be aggressive if you are going to send help. In general, mix things up. But if you have one thing that's working, keep using it until they show they can adjust to it. I think this is going to be a big series for, like, show a card and make them have to counter it. And until they counter, like, keep pressing that tactical edge.
My question is going to be, will the Lakers be able to score consistently enough with Luka and AR? And we're kind of in uncharted territory here, where we can look at the bench numbers throughout the season, because it was primarily LeBron with the Banshees or some of the bench guys during the regular season, pre-Luka and Austin injuries. And then post-Luka and Austin injuries, it's been like 4, I would say, bad teams. Like 2 of the teams are okay, but they were both decimated. And then the OKC game, they didn't play LeBron and they got ran off the floor. So looking at some of the numbers here, I was looking at shot or 3-point luck adjusted lineup data. And so I did it 50%. So 50% league average, 50% actual results. And with LeBron on, no Luka or Austin, the Lakers had a 118.8 offensive rating, which would be the 3rd best offense in the NBA. That's a pretty good number. And also had a 113.1 defensive rating, which would be the 11th best defense, and 5.7 net rating, 6th best in the NBA, for extrapolating that out. So like, they were pretty good with LeBron on and Luka and Austin off, but a majority of that came in the form of LeBron versus bench groups and just the randomness of the regular season, and there's not this giant sample of actual like games that both Luka and Austin missed that LeBron played in. So that part is still an unknown to me. The Lakers also didn't really play a team with LeBron anywhere close to the caliber of Houston, in my opinion. So look at the last 5 games of the season. They had a 116 offensive rating, which is obviously almost 3 points per 100 possessions lower than the season-long number without Luka and Austin. Still ranks 12th in the league offensively, but that's a little bit more pedestrian there. And that does come with post-All-Star break. Dallas, Utah, and Golden State were all bottom 9 defenses. So they're playing some of the worst defenses in the league at that time. And then Phoenix was without their top 3 ball handlers for that game. And then looking a little bit more deeply into it, LeBron for the season series, 22 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.7 blocks, and just 2 turnovers on 68, 50, 73 shooting splits. So great shooting splits for LeBron, but obviously the usage, and as you mentioned, they were using him a lot on these wide pin downs, corner actions, and then also him getting out in transition and leaking out a bit. But at the same time, the Lakers are losing a combined 48 points, 9 rebounds, 12 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 35 shot attempts and 13 free throw attempts from Luka and Austin from this series. So that is an enormous amount of offensive production and just overall production that I'm not quite sure how they're going to replace that. And I know there's been some success recently, and they've had 3 straight blowout wins. And like, even putting aside the level of competition, there are some things that they started to figure out. I just think LeBron, Marcus, and Luke going up against guys like Amen Thompson or Tari Eason, and then, you know, with Houston doing their switching, you're going to be switching on to Jabari Smith or Kevin Durant. Like, they're going to target Şengün and Reed Shepherd a ton, but I just think this Rockets team is at just a different level defensively than any of the teams the Lakers have faced. So there's just this element of the unknown. I just don't know what it's going to look like. Like, what we see in game 1 is really going to be the first true test for this group against a legit team and a legit defense.
I think LA's outgunned. Like, from a talent standpoint, you are missing your 2 most offensively talented players this season. And when I look at the talent data for these 2 teams, Luka stands alone as the number 1. And, you know, as a 2, Austin's up there with, I think KD or Şengün was close. And like, you're good matching up 2 against 2, 3 against 3, but LA's missing 1 and 2. And so there's a big gap and a big drop off, and it's going to be really hard to, like, if just from a playmaking, decision making, ball handling standpoint, what you're able to run is so much more limited. And so I think you're asking a really good question. I think LA is going to have to be super meticulous and not just kind of let the style of, you know, just let the team go freelance. I think they really need to be focused on getting LeBron the ball at the elbow, letting him facilitate, letting him attacking mismatches with purpose, slowing the game down, and like doing what they can to maybe like attack mismatches in the post, and then based on whatever help is sent, try to counter it. I don't think you can let Houston dictate who has the ball, who's making the decisions. And if I were the Rockets, that's what I'd be looking to do. I'd be looking to get the ball out of LeBron's hands and make these other guys beat me, and just trust that they can't.
What about the Rockets? What's your question for Houston?
So it's basically the same question. What are they going to do with their defense? And part of the reason I ask this is going back to, again, a year ago, we faced an opponent that in the regular season and prior playoffs, like, they had clear tendencies. There was a clear game plan. And if I expected Minnesota to do what they should have done. So did LA, and they didn't. And so I was fooled, and I don't want to fall for that again. Houston, when we look at how they play this season, they are pretty mixed, pretty balanced in terms of dropping, hedging, and switching, in terms of their ranks among the rest of the league. When they played the Lakers, they were a bit hedge heavy, but that's with Luka, that's with Austin. They're not playing. And so how do we expect them to go out there and play? If they're switching, you have to have a different game plan. You have to be ready to run different concepts, different sets. If they're drop, you have to do different things. If they're hedging, you have to do different things. And what they decide to go with, I think, really matters for LA, because LA's offensive scheme this season has been very geared towards like they will beat hedging defenses. And like when you look at what's on the screen here, the shot profile, when opponents are hedging and blitzing, LA gets catch and shoot threes and they get to the rim. Those are awesome outcomes. They draw a lot of free throws as well. I cut that out of the graphic here, but there's a high free throw rate also. Against drop and against switching, there's been a big drop-off in the expected efficiency. There's been a big drop-off in the coverage fit, and that coverage fit is when the team runs a ball screen or handoff play. Like, for example, double drag works well against hedging. Stack with the back screen works well against drop coverage. Those like inside seal pick and rolls where you get the roll man behind the switching defender is a switch beater. So you can run switch beating concepts versus switching, drop against drop, yada, yada. 37% of the time, they're doing that correctly. So they are losing the rock, paper, scissors game when opponents drop and when opponents switch, and their shot profiles are not the way that you would love them to be against those two types of defense. So does Houston go with what they used in the regular season and lean on hedging? And they've done it more and more as the year's gone on. They've gone more and more away from drop coverage after Steven Adams went down. Or do they switch up the game plan, try to go against what LA's weaker facing and try to switch and send help, or try to drop and just hope that LA can't try to like throw lobs over Şengün like they did against Jokic when they played Denver in recent games. I don't know which route they'll pick. I think there are paths to success for either or any of the three for LA. But if they do open game one hedging, I feel much better than if they open up game one in drop or switching defenses.
How do you feel the absence of Luka and Austin factors into some of these numbers, just in your read on the situation, right? Because I assume a lot of the hedging and blitzing is related to Luka having a big first quarter and then teams start to change the game plan against him, or, you know, that's just an example of when we've seen teams hedge or blitz LA very heavily. So I would assume they're going to mix it up and kind of attack it in different ways. On film, I noted that, you know, they were in more drop in that Christmas game, then they progressively started switching more and hedging and blitzing more. But just without those two, like, do you still see them hedging and blitzing against LeBron, or do you see them maybe switching against him and being like, hey, you know, try to beat us one-on-one. We feel like we can stay in front of you and force you into a contested jumper?
I think it's a good question. Looking at like the recent games and how LA's played, they have the same issues from a coverage fit standpoint. So the plays they're calling are still good against hedging. They're still weak against the others. And the team's success in those situations, even with what the personnel is, has been comparable in terms of, well, not comparable like one-to-one, but the relative relationship is about the same. The team has still been most successful against hedging and blitzing, even without Luka and Austin. Then they've been less successful against switching, and even less successful against drop. Drop has been a real big issue lately, and I think that's because the pull-up three-point shooting just isn't there. If you drop against this Lakers team in its current iteration, either we need like Luke Kennard pull-up threes, or we need LeBron pull-up threes, or we need to be like trying to throw lobs to our roll men over a dropping big, which I don't think is going to work against Capella, could work against Şengün. There are fewer natural options on the table if the opponent were to drop with who isn't available for LA. Whereas with the hedging, I think the big difference is teams don't need to. They don't feel like they need to hedge because you don't have to have that guy up at the level of the screen to take away the pull-up three. But if they are there, and I guess the idea would be, let's take advantage of weaker ball handlers and really try to blitz them and force them into turnovers. If you can, that's great for the defense, but if not, you're still allowing two guys to be drawn to like Marcus Smart or Luke Kennard or something, and now we have a 4v3 or a 3v2 or a 2v1 to take advantage of, and the reason you run set plays against hedging is to turn a 4v3 into a 3v2 or a 2v1, because it makes the read easier for the ball handler, and you're often reading between like catch and shoot corner three and lob. So those are, you know, I still expect it to be less effective than if Luka or Austin were out there, but it's still, the scheme is still doing its job, and we're still seeing it work enough that I am still interested in seeing the Houston team go out and hedge.
We're kind of along the same lines with our questions here, because my question for the Rockets was, can Houston capitalize when they have an advantage, specifically out of those doubles against Kevin Durant and against Alperen Şengün, and also when the Lakers are aggressively shading over and there's a guy in the gap there, or they're zoning up against one side of the floor. Because one thing that really stood out to me on film was Houston it was a disaster class of how to handle playing with advantages. Like, it wasn't, I think everybody remembers from that second game, Kevin Durant retreating and backcourt violation. It even had an 8-second violation. And like some of the KD turnovers were jarring and stood out. And it was like, he just looked like he had never seen a double team before, and the double would be coming and he would just retreat. And then all of a sudden you're adding a third defender with the half court line and maybe even a fourth defender with the sideline. It was just like, what is this guy doing? Like, I don't know what was going on with KD for that game in particular. A little bit in the third game, but more so that second game. But even when Houston started to counter and they would have that release valve, typically Reed Shepherd or Jabari Smith kind of coming up to 35 feet, 40 feet up, they still struggled to execute on 4-on-3, 3-on-2 situations. And there were several airballed 3-pointers. There was one possession. They got 4 offensive rebounds in one sequence, 5 shot attempts, and did not score on that trip down the floor. So it's like, if the Lakers are able to double and force turnovers, force Houston to, basically Kevin Durant was not a factor in that second half of that game too, and was not a factor at times in that third game. If they're able to just take KD out and then also take out Şengün at times when he's playing without KD, like, I think that's a key thing here, is if KD or Şengün is ever off the floor, you're doubling the other one. And I'm getting more aggressive with, like, I don't trust the other guys to be able to create and extend and execute with advantages. Now, there will be the plays where it's like the bang bang and they get a guy cutting along the baseline or from the dunker spot and they get a dunk or something, or there'll be the offensive rebounds. But for the most part, I was like, from a Houston perspective, I thought it was really disappointing and discouraging to see their lack of an ability to execute with advantage against the Lakers defense. And so that to me is like, if it plays out the way it did in the second and third game, I think we're in for a long series regardless of whether Luka and Austin return. If it plays out more like the Christmas game, and I thought the passing was sharper and the movement and the cutting and just the timing with everything was better. If it's more like that, obviously I think it's going to be a short series, and that's why that game was a blowout and the other two went into the clutch. So I'm just really curious to see how prepared Houston is, because I didn't think they did a great job adjusting in that second game with the traps versus KD. And even the third game, I thought it still was a little shaky at times. So, I would assume they're more prepared for this, but if they're not, and the Lakers are able to get away with more aggressive schemes against KD, against Alperen Şengün, then that's where LA's defense could potentially muck up this series and extend it through their defense. And even if they're not offensively maybe at the same level they've been at recently, like, you can force, they had nearly a 19% turnover percentage for the season series. Houston, like, if Lakers continue that, I think this will be a long series.
Yeah, force the issue, make them make decisions. They haven't shown that they can do it effectively and consistently. It was interesting hearing Houston's guys after that game talk about, like, this was a masterclass defensive game plan, and it was really just like the Lakers were sending double teams. And so I found it very amusing at the time. We'll see how it looks in the series. I'd expect them to be more prepared, but in general, like, this Houston team shows up as the 28th ranked offensive optimization team in the NBA when we compare the LeBron like impact data for their players compared to the talent data, which is a new thing we have over at the site. We've had 3-point shooting, finishing, playmaking, whatnot. We have taken all of that, taken their job, taken their physical tools, and calculated what would the expected offensive impact of a player be based on their skill set, and then compare that with the actuals. So it's not like hypothetical, oh, what if he maybe shot better? No, it's with how well he shot, with how good of a passer he is, how impactful should he be? And almost across the board, their guys are underperforming what you'd expect from them. And it shows up. It shows up in game. It shows up schematically. And like a critical piece of this series will be like making their coaching staff make adjustments and making their players make decisions they're not used to making. really forcing that issue. I'd rather go out swinging than be passive defensively and let, KD shoot over whatever mismatch he decides to pick and, them get some offensive rebounds and just bludgeon us to death on the boards.
Who's your Lakers player X factor?
So I went so many different places with this one as I was preparing for this. I landed on a place I was not expecting, and that place is Jake LaRavia. Jake LaRavia he may not start game one, but I do expect at a certain point he may be the primary Kevin Durant matchup. I spent a lot of time digging into data, looking at KD's matchup this season, the positions of those players, the defensive roles of those players, the height, the weight of those players, to understand how he, as an ISO player, shifted his shot profile and shifted his effectiveness based on who's guarding him. And if you're too small, he shoots over you. If you're too big, if you're above, I think it was 6'10", his 3-point frequency doubles in ISO, and he gets to the rim way more. So he'll drive by you, or he'll dance around, get you, on your heels, and then shoot over you, and we don't want that. So that takes out, theoretically, putting a center on him on purpose. And then it was looking at all right, wing stoppers do okay against him. Point of attack guys that can really get into his body, make his dribble uncomfortable, but are still tall enough and long enough to contest his pull-ups were the optimal combo, and that is Jake LaRavia when we look at the options. He grades out best, Marcus Smart second best, although his size is a concern, then Rui, and then maybe some of your bigger guys. So I think defensively, if he can stay in front, contest well, not foul, I'm interested to see if he can try to slow down Kevin Durant. Then offensively, and on the screen here, we see Jake LaRavia's perimeter defensive talent grades this season. B+ for ISO defense isn't what you'd want to be deploying on Kevin Durant. But I do want to pull everyone's attention
with
to
a bunch of A+.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's a good juxtaposition between what the last report card we saw on this one. But that A- pickpocket rating, he's going to be getting those on-ball steals, and then the A- passing lane defensive rating is talking about the off-ball deflections and interceptions he gets. So if LA does send that aggressive help, you need guys behind it like Jake LaRavia to jump those passing lanes, and he is somebody that can do that. So if he can be disruptive enough, force KD to shoot some middies, contest like hell, and cross his fingers, we might be able to get the best outcome. But I do worry about this matchup for sure. And then on the other end of the court, this is where I've been, I think, more disappointed in Jake this season. He was coming off of a good shooting year last year, but this season on high quality threes, 93rd percentile there, A grade. You can see the F shot making, that is his difficulty adjusted shooting, and the F catch and shoot 3-point shot making. So he has not been a high gravity guy. He has not been he's not giving you good return on investment for the kinds of threes he's been given. And if he's going to play well enough defensively to, mandate more minutes for this specific series, he needs to shoot better on offense. We're seeing way too many open Jake threes that are air balls or hitting the backboard or things like that. So I'd love to see him get his confidence up and use that defensive playmaking to help turn some defense into offense.
There was a graphic shared late in the season on X of the 10 players who've all attempted at least 100 3-point attempts for the season and shot the lowest percentage of open catch and shoot threes. And Jake LaRavia was last in the NBA among that group at 31%. So it's just, it's been a real issue. And I think that's the only thing keeping him from a larger role, because to your point about the defense and just all the little things, I think about the offensive rebounding, the cutting, the connective passing, the ability to attack mismatches in the post, every once in a blue moon. I just think there's a lot he brings to the table, but with the nature of LA's offense, at least previously, now they're undergoing some changes. It was a heavy dose of the big three creating advantages for perimeter guys or the interior guys with lobs and dump offs. But for the perimeter guys specifically, it was a lot of driving kick or kick out passes for uncontested, semi-contested threes. And if Jake isn't shooting the ball at a certain level, at some point, there is a breaking point where it is difficult to play him over a certain amount of time. But I have a couple of backups for my X factors, and Jake was my backup just in case you picked my primary choice, because he stood out on film. That Christmas game was a disaster, but I walked away from that thinking Jake and Vando were the two guys who stood out in a positive sense and looked like they belonged on the floor in that game. And then Jake, similarly, in the two games in Houston, I thought had some good defensive possessions and just winning 50-50 balls, offensive rebounds, all that stuff. So I think if he can shoot the ball at a certain level, he can play a big role in this series. And maybe he just plays a big role in the series because the Lakers are shorthanded. They only have like maybe 8 playable guys, and they need him against Kevin Durant and Jabari Smith and some of their other guys. But I think he's a great choice because you might not think of him. You might think of like some of the guys slotted a little bit higher above him in the pecking order. But I think he is a guy that if he could have a series where he shoots even league average to above on threes, I think he becomes a real factor.
Okay. Who did you go with for your X factor? Because I was thinking about Smart. I was thinking about Kennard. Those were the 3 guys that I was choosing between. I thought about Ayton a bit. I'm curious to see where you went.
Yeah, I mean that's the guy I went with. I went with DeAndre Ayton, and I'm going to. I don't have any fancy graphics for this one. I'm just going to go off of a few notes. So today at JJ's at practice, JJ said was asked about Ayton and his improved energy and focus levels over the past month or so. He said the whole season for him has been about finding consistency. When he's at his best, we're an elite basketball team. He raises our ceiling so much. And then he noted that on both ends. And one of the things I noticed in rewatching the season series was in that second game, Clint Capella got the start because Alperen Şengün was still out, and he didn't play in the Christmas game because Steven Adams played and was the backup center. But Ime quickly lost trust with Clint Capella, did not play him as much in the second half. Remember, the Rockets closed that game going small. And then in that third game, played him a couple of shifts, but did not play him much. And also, like in the fourth quarter, it would either be Alperen Şengün at the 5 or Houston going small with DFS out there. So I think with that context of Clint Capella will probably start off as the backup center option, but I could see him potentially getting played off of the floor. If that's where this series goes, I think Ayton in particular against some of those small ball groups could have a huge impact. And I think about that close to that second game where he had, I believe, 4 offensive rebounds in the final 4 minutes and had a couple putbacks, had a couple of nice finishes, and just was did not have a good game up to that point. I thought Clint Capella had outplayed him up to that point, despite Ime pulling him. And DA, similar to the Denver game, gets checked back in late, and he attacks their small ball groups. And some of it was like right place, right time, but I thought he did a nice job capitalizing. And so looking at the season long numbers or season series numbers, rather 11 points, 6 rebounds, 1 turnover, 0.7 assists. So not really anything steady out there like a positive way. But I just think if DA can have a big series and if he can hold his own against Alperen Şengün, which I think he did a better job of in that third game compared to the Christmas game, if he averages 16 to 18 points and like 10 to 12 rebounds for the series, I think he can play his way into like right now, I think Houston has 4 of the 5 best players in the series. I think we could debate KD versus LeBron. For the entirety of the season, KD was better, but LeBron, the version of him we've seen recently, plus his playoff pedigree, I think LeBron could easily be the best player in the series, especially now that he's in a number 1 role. But if you put KD and LeBron to the side, I would go Alperen Şengün, Amen Thompson, and then Jabari Smith for the next 3 best players in the series. But I think DeAndre Ayton is one of the few Lakers that can actually match a Jabari Smith or even an Amen Thompson, however unlikely it is, and potentially make a case to be like the 4th best player in the series. And if we're looking back in 2 weeks on this series and DeAndre Ayton is the 4th best player on the floor, Lakers probably won the series or at least have pushed it to 7, and then maybe Austin or Luka is back at that point. So I think in general, DeAndre Ayton is the X factor with the Lakers because when he is bad, he's pretty bad and he's pretty disruptive and destructive on both sides of the ball. So if they get a locked in contract year DA for a playoff series, I think that's where like just his because Şengün can't guard him at least with some of those like deeps. Like I was seeing some of his jumpers in the short roll and a couple of nice post moves and fadeaways or hooks over Şengün. Like Şengün should not be able to hang with DA defensively. So if he can capitalize with lobs and dump offs and then a little bit of the occasional post up or short roll opportunity. Then he's rebounding, protecting the rim, and being engaged defensively. That player can be very useful for the Lakers. Now, am I going to bet on them getting that guy? No, I'm not going to go that far, but that's why I think he's the X factor.
I think that's a great choice, and I could see him being the 4th best player. I could see him being the 14th best player, and that's been the experience, right?
It's Deandre Ayton experience, yeah.
And so I pulled up we've got a free tool at BBall Index, a player trends dashboard, and you can see month by month or to every 10 or 15 games or whatever, how they've played and what kind of impact they've added. October, he was in the 37th percentile, below average. November, 75th percentile, really good. And then December, 3rd percentile, one of the worst. Then January, 42nd percentile, below average again. February, 28th percentile, even worse. March, 79th percentile, really good again. And then April, 45th percentile. So he's been very up and down in which version of him we get. So critical, especially against an opponent in Houston that, like, if he doesn't rebound well, it's going to be a big problem because we need him to have an outsized impact on the boards given what the rest of this team looks like from a rebounding standpoint. He grades out as one of the best defensive rebounding talent players on the team and in the series, and he's got to show it because if he doesn't and he's not forceful on the boards defensively and aggressive offensively with offensive rebounds and finishing strong, drawing fouls, I really don't see a path to victory for LA. So I think this is a really good choice by you.
What about with Houston? Who's your X factor for them?
Yeah, so another guy that I can see, he's usually very much a positive, but if LA can turn him into more of a weakness for Houston, it would be a big deal for this series, and that's Thompson. He is not as much looking at his counting stats, but like defensively, we're looking at his talent grades here compared to other rotation point of attack defenders. Lots of A+ again, really, really good. This guy is fantastic defensively. If Houston does decide to switch, which I think they may, it is critical for LA to get him the hell off of LeBron James and stick him in the corner. Go guard Jake LaRavia. Go guard someone else. And the percentage of the time he is spending guarding the on-ball, strong offensive players is such a key part of this series. I want him guarding Rui and picking his nose in the corner, and I want early step-up ball screens. I want double drags. Find ways to get him out of the play. And the one area on the screen that we do see that is not a good grade for him is that F passing lane defense. That is telling us he is not ball hawking off ball, jumping and inserting himself into plays to jump passing lanes when he is taken out of that on-ball responsibility. So allow his offensive impact to not be at its peak by trying to be very purposeful about getting him as soon as possible, as far away as possible. And so that to me is key defensively. If he's allowed to just stick on LeBron, it's going to be a really, really tough series because we need LeBron to score a lot, facilitate a lot. And this guy's very good. He stays in front. He's very disruptive. He's good in the post. He's good on the perimeter. Offensively, he's not, though. And that is the other piece of this. This season, there have been teams here and there that have left him alone. They have given him the Russell Westbrook against the Lakers and the bubble treatment where they leave him alone. I know with the Spurs, they put Wemby on him and Wemby played goalie and it was not a good time for Houston. If the Lakers can find a way to do something like that, I don't know, maybe it's LeBron is guarding him, but not really guarding him. This is a guy who's shooting 22% or something like that on his 3-pointers. And it's not good offense when he has the ball. There are ways Houston can try to counter. And I tried to look at how often do they do each of these to get a sense of how much of a threat is it. Because in theory, this is an issue, but if Houston counters it really well and he's, always screening on ball, off ball, he's cutting, maybe it's not as big of a deal as I'm trying to make it out to be. But one of the ways you can try to counter teams leaving you alone is by setting on ball screens and taking advantage of your man being out of position. On the season, he is averaging 1 screen assist per game, 1 screen assist point per game, very low. So that speaks to the on-ball screens, that speaks to the off-ball screens, whether it's pin downs, flare screens, whatever. His season high, guess, Jovan, I'd like for you to guess in the chat. Go ahead and guess how many roll man made baskets has he, like, what was his peak as in terms of roll, pop, and slip made baskets in a game? He's made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This season, his peak, his best output, whole season, any game for rolls.
3.
Lower.
Wow.
1.
2?
1.
Okay.
He has never hit more than 1 bucket in a game as the roll man. And so he's not screening on ball. He's not screening off ball. I went through and I looked at the last month's worth of games, plenty of which he was left alone like this. It was 15 games. He only had 7 total scoring possessions on cuts for the whole month when being left alone, and 6 of them were specifically when the defenses were sending double teams on post-ups, and it wasn't like he's standing on the perimeter and we're leaving him alone. It was more, we're sending more choreographed team defensive doubles, and he happened to be the guy that was open. He is not cutting frequently enough if you leave him in the corner. He is not screening on ball. He's not screening off ball. He will stand in the dunker spot, but I'll take a guy who has D- shot-making efficiency at the rim this season in exchange for getting a goalie. And so I think if the Lakers can find ways to, again, throw stuff at Houston, make them adjust, and disrupt other parts of their offense, it would be in their best interest. And to me, this is someone that you try to turn from a positive into a negative in any way you possibly can.
He was incredible in the season series. I thought he was Houston's best player and arguably the second best player overall. Like I would say Luka was, had a rough Christmas performance, but made up for it with the final couple of games. And so I would say he was Houston's best player, in my opinion, through the season series and arguably the second best player overall. And looking at his numbers quickly, 24 points per game, which is obviously significantly higher than his season numbers. 10 rebounds per game, including 4 offensive. He killed, like, anytime there was a 50-50 offensive rebound, Thompson got it against whoever, including some of the Lakers centers. 5 assists and a steal with only 2 turnovers. Like the Lakers, Houston struggled with the turnovers. A lot of that, Şengün and KD combined for almost 9 turnovers per game. Not Thompson. He only had 2 turnovers, and then 61-0, 82 shooting splits. So 61% overall, but went, I think he took, I want to say 4 threes and went 0 for 4, if I'm not mistaken. So, didn't attempt many threes in the season series, but still shot 61% overall. So he was my X factor. So I'm not going to touch on it too much other than one adjustment I noticed the Lakers did in the second and third games was, like, LeBron was the primary guy on him, but the Christmas game, he played like 6 to 10 feet off of him based on the possession. They tightened that up and started to play him more straight up in those last couple of games, and he still got by whoever was in front of him. And that he's the one that, to me, I'm like, I don't really know what they do in the sense of, like, if you give him a runway, he's going to generate downhill speed, and then he just looks like a superhero out there, just slicing through the defense, and especially with LA's lack of overall athleticism, just it was really difficult for them to stay in front of him or even rotate in front of him. Like there was a couple charge attempts, but he pretty much did whatever he wanted against their defense. It was a matter of if he made the shot or not at the rim. But I also wondered, to your kind of earlier point, do you put a DeAndre Ayton or a Jackson Hayes on him? Do you lean into, like, I think about if we go with the projected starting group, we don't know who Houston's 5th starter is going to be. So let's just put Luke Kennard. It's either Tari Eason, who's been in a prolonged shooting slump, Josh Okogie, who I don't think should be starting or playing much in this series, but we'll see, or Reed Shepherd. So I think you put Luke Kennard on that guy. You put Marcus on KD, and then you could potentially put DA on Amen, and then potentially go LeBron on Şengün or Rui on Şengün, and then the other one on Jabari. And I think leaning into post defense plays more into the strengths of LeBron or Rui, who, Rui through the years, I think has done a decent job against Jokic or Randall or Towns, like even Şengün. Like I think if you just give him the job of just play post defense against this guy, it's a very simple task. Rui can execute it at somewhere between a decent to a solid level. So I wonder if you kind of adjust the matchups that way, because if you have DA or Jackson just being big in front of him and trying to force him into the help, and then just roaming otherwise, like I think that could be an interesting defensive strategy.
Yeah, it allows you to be creative. And the more creative you can be, the more you can throw at Houston, the more I feel confident that they won't have every card in their hand that they need to play from an adjustment standpoint. If it's not clear already, I do not believe in Houston's coaching staff from a coaching adjustment standpoint. This may come back to bite me. They very well may still win the series. Like, I still think they have a good shot to win the series, but LA's only shot is to, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and ask as many questions as you can and see which ones they're not prepared to answer. And as scary as it will be for him to be flying 100 miles an hour downhill with the ball in his hands at someone trying to take a charge or have verticality, I will live with a couple of those plays if it allows me to have a goalie the other, 80% of the time, and then we're able to take away a lot of the offensive rebounding and a lot of the post game. Now, I think offensive rebounding is a way that you can try to counter this. He's going to cut as much as he can, and he's going to try to get in position to make plays. And that happens whether or not you're leaving him alone. But if you don't have a body on him to start, there's more vulnerability that someone isn't looking his way and getting in position to box him out. And so that certainly could be a downside of this kind of approach. High variance player.
Yeah. Quickly, my backup X factor was Jabari Smith. I think he's someone who, for the season series, averaged 19 points, 7 rebounds, a steal, a block on 54, 37, 83 shooting splits. So he's someone that I thought did just like kind of like random plays where he would just like cut into an open spot, or he would just find gaps in the defense, or sometimes the Lakers would be in rotation and he's the guy on the weak side who they have to rotate out to because they're playing so aggressively with the doubling or shading over. And he's just a guy that to me could have a big series. Like to me, I kind of view him, they're not the same player, and I think just different archetypes, but in terms of potential impact, I wonder if he could have like a Jaden McDaniels type impact on this series, more so on the offensive end, because again, I think there's a big gap between those two defensively, even if they have like relatively similar body types and frames. But Jaden McDaniels just absolutely destroyed the Lakers on the weak side. And it would be a lot of the shading over toward Ant or Randall. And then the Wolves did a nice job of finding guys on the weak side. And the Lakers are kind of willing to live with that. It just like daring Jaden McDaniels into being a shooter, or can you attack a closeout against a rotating defense and like make something happen? And he won that battle a lot last series, or last postseason. I think if they're keying in on Şengün, Durant, and Thompson, like you can only key on so many guys. And if Jabari Smith is like the number 4 guy, technically, I think he could feast with a lot of open threes. Like he missed a ton of good looks in the season series, still shot 37% overall on threes, but he's a guy that to me, he's kind of like their Rui, but I think he's a better version of Rui on both sides of the ball. And the rebounding, the ability to play small ball looks with him. Like I just think he's kind of this Swiss Army knife piece for them that can score at all 3 levels and also switch across multiple positions. And like, I just think if my theory going into the series is right, that he's the 5th best player in the series, then that's where Houston can make this a short series.
I like it. And he is going to be just yet another body in terms of the relentless offensive rebounding, and he's a strong defensive rebounder as well. He's in the 95th percentile this season, ranked 31st in the league, A+ grade in terms of total rebounding impact, which is a stat we have that looks at team success when you're on the court versus off the court, so like an on-off, but it also adjusts for who your teammates are in the lineups you're playing in, as well as who the opponents are in the lineups you're playing against. So it difficulty adjusts for the context as well. And he has been, when he's out there, his team rebounds better, almost better than anyone in the league.
What's your statistical X factor?
So for me, I mean, my mind immediately went to Houston's offensive rebounding. They have 6 guys with at least an A- in offensive rebounding talent. But I figured you might go for that one. And so I went with a backup. And I also looked in and I saw that The offensive rebounding rate for Houston when they win versus when they lose isn't really different, which I thought was interesting. It was like 0.3% different. One area that is very different when they win compared to when they lose is how often they are fouling opponents and sending them to the free throw line. When they win, they don't foul. They lose when they send opponents to the free throw line. And the Lakers, consequently, also have the largest gap on offense of any team between their free throw rate between wins and losses. With Luka and Austin out, they're not going to draw as many fouls, of course, but if LA can get Houston into some foul trouble, get some free points at the free throw line, it could be a huge benefit for them. It's one way to try to help mitigate the fact that you're probably going to lose the possession battle. And if you can get some of these bigs in foul trouble, or they're a little less aggressive crashing because you are willing to collapse like a chair and draw an offensive foul or a rebounding foul, that might help mitigate some of the rebounding impact as well.
I went with the low hanging fruit of the offensive rebound rate. So again, 47% offensive rebound rate, which is just absolutely ridiculous for Houston in the season series. They crushed the Lakers on the glass, nearly 14 more rebounds per game, which is a pretty big margin there. JJ noted yesterday that the Rockets are fourth in scoring chances on the season, and the Lakers ranked just 21st. So from a possession battle standpoint, that's a massive difference between those two teams. And as I noted earlier, despite LA's defensive improvement over the second half of the season, particularly after the All-Star break, they actually rebounded the ball worse, and particularly on the defensive glass. And looking at even this little stretch to close the season, they had the back-to-back against Golden State and Phoenix, which was probably their two most serious games, right? Like in theory, they could have lost either one of those games. That they had just lost to Dallas and OKC, and Golden State and Phoenix were trying more than Utah was. So like those would be like the two games where you kind of pencil them in as like, okay, let's see how LA fares. They fared well. They blew out both of those teams, but one of the weak points in the results where they allowed 33 offensive rebounds across both of those games. And I think particularly in that Phoenix game, they'd play really good defense for 16 seconds, 18 seconds, 20 seconds. And then it's turn and ball watch. Where's the rebound going? Not making contact with guys. And for as scrappy as Phoenix is, Houston is at a different level with that. JJ said today that it's just a team full of banshees, and that's accurate. He said they have 8 crashers based on LA's criteria for that in their rotation. So it sounds like maybe Reed Shepherd might be the one guy they're not counting as a crasher. So like the Lakers, like they lost Luka, who was arguably their best rebounder or definitely best non-center rebounder. Austin, in my opinion, is their best rebounding guard, and that bears out with some of the numbers. And they are replacing them with Rui and Luke, who are both worse rebounders and worse defenders than those two guys. So you're taking a step back on the glass and taking a step back defensively. And so in my opinion, this number's got to be down to like 35%. That's still high, but if you can keep them at around like 35% or lower, I think that allows the Lakers to stay competitive in the possession battle. But anything above 35%, I think that they're going to be at potentially such a big deficit where even if Houston's not shooting the ball well and LA's like winning the effective field goal percentage battle or winning the true shooting percentage battle, if Houston's getting all these extra possessions and field goal attempts, it's just at some point it becomes a little bit too big of a gap to overcome.
Yeah, it's definitely a strength of theirs. Theirs is going to be a key for the series. It's something certainly JJ and his staff have identified, and they've talked about, I think, every opportunity over the past week. And it reminds me of, I earlier in the season, I haven't done the whole year, but I was tracking every shot opponents took and how well the team was boxing out, who was doing their job, who wasn't. And I think step one is look to see if your man is crashing. If he's not, I give you, your check. You don't have to go find him and put a body on him if he's getting back in transition defense. But if he is crashing, did you box him out? And so between those two factors, looking yes, no for every player, every possession, other than the guy contesting the shot because they're often kind of flying out of position, and I didn't count that against them. When the Lakers had no players with like a blown box out or missed assignment, they had a 91% defensive rebound rate. When they had just one guy blow an assignment, it drops to 74%. Two guys blow an assignment, which was the most common outcome, 64%. Three guys blow an assignment, 48%. So you were more likely to see the offense get the ball than the defense. And on the couple plays where four guys blew their assignment, only 2% of the time, there was a 25% defensive rebounding rate. So there's a very clear correlation between do you box out and does your team get the ball? It's not exactly the same as do you box out directly connecting with you individually getting the ball. And I think there's a big difference there. LA has some guys that do box out consistently and aren't the best like individual rebounders, and maybe that's why they choose to box out instead. Like Rui boxes out well. He is not a good like get up there, win the battle sort of guy. Maxi Kleba boxes out well. Connect actually boxes out pretty consistently. Ayton boxes out well. Smart boxes out well. And then there are guys like Luka, who doesn't really box out, Vando, who doesn't really box out, but those guys go get the ball. And so they're collecting the stats. They're still winning the contested battles, so that's still good. It's not like if you don't box out, you're a bad defender. But there are different styles of guys on this team, but collectively, they need to get these percentages up. LeBron was at 62%, LaRavia 70%. Let me see. A lot of the other guys are actually pretty high that are still playing, but you need to be consistent. Because if everyone is at like 75%, there's still a decent chance that one or two guys on any given play aren't doing their job. And if you're playing an opponent that doesn't crash, it doesn't matter. And that's the thing is you can get away with bad habits as long as you're playing the right teams, or the ball bounces in the right direction, or the ball goes through the hoop, and it doesn't matter. But against Houston, they ask you the question almost every play, will you box out? And if you opt not to because you're not paying attention, you don't want to be tough enough in that moment, you don't want to take that hit, it's going to come against you because they crash enough guys from enough places and they miss enough shots too that there will be second chance opportunities. So yeah, this is a huge one. It's one I'm absolutely concerned about, but also one that I think if it is a concerted effort, they should be able to do better. This is a very much a try more, do better sort of element in basketball where so much is skill, and there's still skill here. A lot of this is effort, and this is something when I've worked with teams and we track this, it's very much when we pay attention to it and it's communicated to the players, they will do better because you make it a priority and you show them the visibility of the data and you explain the why. The team does better. And then when we stop paying attention to it, the team would do a little bit worse. So if it is top of mind, if it is the number one priority, I expect LA to do better in this series than they did in those regular season games, even missing Luka.
What about your series X factor? And we will add in the caveat of course, the obvious series X factor is does Luka or or Austin return at some point? But putting that giant aside to the side, what is your series X factor?
I think it's like how weird does JJ get with throwing things at Houston, and then how well does Udoka adjust? Are you going to throw zone at them? I think you have to in this series. Not every play, but use it as a changeup. Houston is one of the few teams in the NBA that is less effective, less efficient against zone than they are against man-to-man defense, and hasn't played it only like 1% of the time. So they are uniquely poorly equipped between their perimeter shooting and then the kinds of attacks that they run to attack it. You must ask that question of them repeatedly throughout the series. Can you run different help types? Can you mix in doubles from the strong side, doubles from the weak side, bumping over another perimeter player to take away the immediate kick out sometimes versus not, mix up your pick and roll coverages, like keep this team on their heels and let them get deep in the clock and then chuck something up and hopefully you're in good position to get a rebound. And then I think JJ might do those too. Will he throw out like chunk defenses or some press or find other ways to muck up the game and just buy time and scratch and claw your way to game 5, game 6, and just try to do your best to buy some time for these guys to get back from injury. And I don't think you can do that by playing straight up like honorable NBA, like vanilla defense. You got to get weird with it and throw the dice. And we often see coaches, and this is, I think, the biggest takeaway with data in many sports is we've identified that coaches aren't aggressive enough. They're not taking enough risks. If anything, they're too conservative with going forward on fourth down in football or shooting more threes in basketball or things like that. If JJ does some of this weird stuff and it doesn't work, it's going to make him look bad. He needs to be able to live with that, lean into it, and understand for us as a big underdog, I think the team's like, what, a 6-point underdog or so at home, which means on the road it's going to be double digits. They need to find ways to make this different than what it shows up on paper. And that comes down to a lot of different X's and O's.
And to be honest, like that's one of the things I'm confident in is I think JJ has learned from last season. I don't know. We'll see how quickly he's able to adjust and make rotation decisions and just his calculations in the moment. And I think it'll be better, but I think it needs to be much better than it was last postseason. But I think he, to me, outcoached Ime over the course of the season series. And just with Houston having some of the same flaws game to game, and just they kind of, it just was, I think, really discouraging from a Houston perspective for them to lose that first game in Houston the way that they did, and then to lose the second game in kind of two different stylistic games there, where that first one was more of a rock fight, more honestly more Houston style of like slower pace and not as much transition, and LA just hung around and then had a monster clutch time to win the game. And then that second one was a little bit more up tempo, a little bit more high scoring, and LA won that one as well. So if I'm Houston, like I think you have to put the Lakers away early, and that transitions to my series X factor, which is, can the Lakers control the clutch? We know this season the Lakers were arguably the best clutch team in the NBA. They went 22-8, first in offensive rating, seventh in defensive rating, first in net rating. Houston, conversely, 22-23, which also shows you like Lakers played 30 clutch games, Houston played 45. So they have more experience in the clutch, but we also have a larger sample size of them in the clutch. And they were 20th in offense, 25th in defense, 24th in that rating. So they were objectively a bad clutch time team, and still relatively small sample size from like a minutes and possessions standpoint. But if you look at where they rank in a lot of those categories, it's like them and tanking teams. Like the serious teams all largely performed closer to league average, if not ahead of league average in offensive rating, defensive rating, etc. So that to me is concerning if I'm looking at this from the Houston perspective. Also notable that the pace increases, and I think there's a bit of a correlation with Houston of if they can keep they're the slowest or second slowest team in the league this season. If they can keep the possession game, just keep it a little slower and win the possession battle, that's when I think they're at their best. If it starts to be a little bit more up tempo, that would favor the Lakers, in my opinion. And looking at quickly the two clutch games they played, LA went 2-0. Only 7 minutes, so this is like as small of a sample size as it gets, but like 146 offensive rating for LA, 67 defensive rating. They had a 50% offensive rebound percentage, so they flipped the script with that, and they were crushing Houston on the glass because Houston was closing small for part of that. 0% turnover percentage. Lakers did not turn the ball over once in the clutch, whereas Houston had a 33.3% turnover percentage. So they were turning the ball over functionally every third possession. So it gets 7 minutes, so I don't want to overreact to that. But my just larger point with that is I think it's really important for Houston to win game one, to at least split the first two games, obviously, if not go up 2-0. But like they should try to put the Lakers away as soon as possible. You do not want to extend the series if you're Houston. And I also think that applies to in games. I think Houston's blueprint to winning probably looks more like the Christmas game, where they lead wire to wire. They're up by double figures for a lot of the game, and it doesn't have to go into the clutch. Because if it goes into the clutch and it's like, can LeBron James and JJ Redick outthink and outmaneuver Kevin Durant and Ime Udoka for 3 or 4 minutes? I think they can, even despite the talent disadvantage. So I think that's going to be a big thing in this series, is like how many of the games are even close on either side, right? Like maybe the Lakers have a double-digit win. I doubt it, but maybe. But if it's close, I would favor the Lakers, even just like a teensy amount. And if I'm Houston, you got to try to avoid that, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. If LA can be close late in these games, I will be confident. And if the game slows down in those moments, and you can be like, when I look at usage by player by minute in the game, we see LA really hone in on their stars really late in games. And it's in some ways the best version of what they do. I wish they do it a little bit more frequently, but I like our chances if we can get to that point. And I also know, as a data guy, I've looked at this many years, the regular season clutch data does not correlate at all with the playoff clutch data. And you got a really small sample size in the playoffs. Nor does like the halfway through the year regular season data correlate at all with the end of season data. Like, it's very fluky, but maybe not for us. I don't know. I'm skeptical, but I still think LA. There are reasons
in the clutch. Like 4-game winners this year is wild.
Yeah, I will buy into it. I believe in LeBron.
Drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah.
I'll drink the Kool-Aid for as long as I can.
Okay, so we're just about to make our series prediction, but first I want to open the floor to you. Anything we did not touch on, or any general points or notes or statistics that we didn't hit on with the categories we covered that you just want to get out there before we wrap and make our prediction?
Sure. I think Reed Sheppard's a guy we didn't talk much about, but he is a player. If LA were to try to play drop coverage, there are many reasons why I think it would be good for the Lakers and bad for Houston's offense. But one guy it might benefit is Reed Sheppard. He's a really strong pull-up three-point shooter. This is a snapshot of his player profile at BBall Index, and you can see all of the different badges he has. So the gold badges, he's a really good putbacks. That I might have to check on that one. But
maybe he's part of he's one of the crashers. He's one of JJ's 8 crashers.
Yeah, he might be just around the right guys. I don't know what's going on with that one, but the rest of this, they look right. Really strong with on-ball steal, really good corner shooter. The microwave badge is someone who is a bench guy that has a really high point per minute output. Strong pull-up shooter, deep three-point shooter. He wins hustle plays. There's a lot to like about Reed Sheppard. He is one of the most under-optimized players in the league this season. When we look at his talent data compared to his impact, I think, again, Houston not doing a very good job. 28th in offensive optimization. Defensive optimization isn't good either. Washington's the only team that's lower in both of those. And I think Sheppard has been, he could probably make more money somewhere else and be optimized somewhere else. But as long as LA's not dropping, I'm not as worried about him. But if they do, he will pop off the screen. So that is a kind of he might do a lot. He might do nothing. It kind of depends on the scenario sort of player. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Another thing I was looking at, here's his perimeter shooting. Good pull-up guy, good catch-and-shoot guy. He'll do it on tough shots, that D- quality. The A- creation means he's attempting a lot of pull-up threes. And he has really high off-ball gravity on a team of not too many players that do. So he can be helpful. We'll see if he starts or not. He's someone to keep an eye on this series, potentially. Another thing I was looking at, I thought was interesting. We have a tool at the site where you can plug in, for the Lakers this season, if we take out Luka, we take out Austin, what are their expected best ratings, or best expected net ratings for different lineups? And one that popped up, I'll go to this picture first. This picture's mapping out offensive talent versus offensive impact, and you can see how Luka's in a world of his own, and then you've got Reeves, KD, LeBron, and Şengün in a cluster, and then a big drop-off. So LA's got a number of guys in those top two groups, but they're missing 2 of their 3. And so now it's kind of 2 against 1 in Houston's favor among those higher players. But you can also notice, if you look at the dotted line, the guys below it are ones that are underperforming their talent, and it is a lot of Houston players. The ones above it are overperforming the talent that they should have. The guys that are close to the line are just about where you'd expect them to be.
Okay.
Did you have any other pictures? I gave you so many pictures, man.
I had the lineup ones.
Okay.
If you want to go to those, we could
sure.
You had Lakers first or Rockets second.
Okay. Yeah, let's look at the Laker lineup. So this next one's going to be a screenshot from that tool I was talking about, and you can look at not just the expected offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating, but also looking at specific components of why the lineups are good. And it's based on the talent data for the players. So for example, this top lineup, expected to be a lineup of Smart, Kennard, LaRavia, LeBron, Hayes. That is what the data thinks would be LA's best lineup with their available healthy players. We think it could have a 121 offensive rating, and you could see 98th percentile ball movement, good offensive rebounding, screening.
That might, like,
I'd be happy to see
politics
it.
aside, that might be my preferred starting group.
It would be a fun group. The one below it is the same thing, just with Ayton, I believe. And so this is a fun one to play around with, and just, if I were to sort by minutes.
I wanted to start. I'm going to touch on the starting group with one of mine, but that second group was the group I think should start,
Gotcha.
factoring in the Ayton Hayes politics.
Okay. That's interesting. One thing I'll point everyone's attention to is look at the ball handling. Ball handling's pretty low for all of the ones on the screen here, and these are for like the best projected lineups that we can put together. Low on-ball gravity. It's some talent, some good ball movement, some decent spacing for some of them, pretty good playmaking in general, but definitely not the same well-rounded groups like you can see if you have Luka or Austin in there. So that's offense. This is defense. And you can see, like, the defensive rebounding, big weakness. Defensive playmaking, big weakness. They are allowing teams to take shots, and they are allowing teams to get second chances. And this is what they're expected to do. This isn't like, yes, it says they've played 11.2 minutes, but this isn't their results in 11.2 minutes. This is what we think they should be able to do in theory based on modeling out how lineups perform. So it's a fun tool to play around with. I think it's interesting to find groups that are underutilized, and I mean, if you want to dig into that a little bit more, you're welcome to. But yeah, and then here's the overall. You can see the offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating. And this is, again, all expected data. And then you can look at the talent, the spacing, and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up Houston's lineups here. Let's see what this says. Well, their lineups are a little bit more positive.
much more positive, yes. The best Laker lineup we had on the screen was plus 9.91. The worst Houston lineup we see on the screen is 3 points higher than that, or about 2 points higher than that. So,
That first one's
the
interesting
talent.
because I don't know if we'll see that lineup. They didn't really use Aaron Holiday in the season series. I don't even, off the top of my head, I don't even think he played in the 3 games. But yeah, that's a pretty dominant lineup.
Yeah, it's got good spacing compared to what they often are putting out there. It's got good rim protection. It has some good creators. Sometimes, and we see this when you build the lineups out, you don't always just want to stack like the most talented guys. The skill set fits matter as well. And that's why this is a fun thing to play around with. We actually have a lineup creator tab where you can pick any 5 players off of any teams. And so you can see like, all right, what would the West All-Star team against the East All-Star team? Or, if we want to add this 5th player, Walker Kessler to the Lakers, what would it look like? Stuff like that. It's interesting to see how the synergies of different skill sets play out. But I show this to show everyone they've got better options than we do. We need to find ways to overcome that with some shooting variance, some grit, and some X's and O's.
Yep. So anything else before I hit on mine, and then we'll get to the prediction?
No, go for it.
So mine is, I mean, this is related to your projected lineup. I think Jake should be starting over Rui, and I get the offensive argument for it. I think it is very much an offense-defense situation of there's a gap between the two on both sides of the ball. I think based on who else is in the lineup, I would lean more on the defensive side because I think looking at, like, we know Luke is a limited defender, to put it kindly. Marcus is going to have the KD assignment, though the Lakers will be switching a lot. LeBron is going to be carrying the highest offensive load he's carried all season and having to do it while also playing more. Like, the Lakers have been pretty conservative with his minutes throughout the season. He's going to be playing 38, 40, maybe even 42 minutes some of these games. So to ask him to play that much plus ramp up his offensive usage, I think you have to ask like a bare minimum of him defensively and a certain like baseline of competence, which I think he's capable of. But I don't think you can ask like all defense LeBron as the low man and just manning the back line of the defense. So a lot of that's going to come down to the center and whoever's the other forward or wing out there. And we just have a pretty substantial sample size that the Rui DA pairing has not been good defensively. And so looking at some of the quick lineup data here, and this is all luck adjusted. So again, 50% based on the actual results versus 50% of like comparing it to league average, Rui and Luke on the floor, minus 7.9 net rating, bad. Rui and DA minus 0.6. That has been bolstered lately with some of the success they had later in the season. But like, all right, that's like pretty close to neutral. Luke plus DA minus 10.7. Rui, Luke, and DA on the floor minus 15.2. So now Luke and DA and the trio have all played under 200 minutes. So like it's a pretty small sample size. Rui and Luke's at 344 minutes, according to JJ and the Lakers analytics staff. 250 is where you want to be. And then Rui and DA, we have 863 minutes on that. And it's been a net negative all season. And they've been really bad on the defensive side. So you also can start looking at like some of that with Luka off and with Austin off. And like it actually gets worse when you start factoring in no Luka, no Austin. So I just think the Lakers are setting themselves up for failure on the defensive end, where like that starting group has to be so good offensively to offset its defensive deficiencies. And I'm pretty concerned with it. And maybe they prove me wrong. Maybe they play a bunch of zone. Maybe they're very aggressive and they're able to get away with some of those things. But like that front line in particular of DA, LeBron, and Rui, I just really don't like that combination together. Then you're also adding in Luke. And like at some point, there's just too many guys to attack on that side of the ball. Then in general, how many guys do the Lakers go with? JJ said 9. And typically you see a coaching staff go with more guys to start a series and progressively diminishes. I only trust 8 and maybe even 7. We'll see like where Vando fits in the series. I think you probably have to play him almost no matter what and just like stick with 8. But the Lakers are going to have to really ride those 8 guys. And then my final question is just like, who is the 5th starter for Houston? I would probably go Tari Eason. I know he's had the shooting slump. It gives LA someone to hide off of with like Luke or whoever else. I just think he's a much better player than Josh Okogie. And Reed Shepherd, I do want to try to limit the Shepherd Şengün minutes if I'm Houston, just because that gives LA 2 guys to target. So I'd probably go Tari Eason. And also, I think he's probably the best LeBron defender for this matchup. He's a little bit bigger than Amen Thompson. He's a bit stronger than him. So I'd want him as the primary LeBron guy. Anything that I said that you want to react to? Maybe, what about like the starting group? Like, what do you think of those guys together?
I mean, all season, we talked about this in the preseason. From game one, like this is not what I want to see, right? The defensive role fit is something that I talk a lot about. You need to have like a point of attack defender. If you're having a lineup that doesn't have a point of attack defender, it's not going to go well. You need to have the right number of on-ball defenders and off-ball defenders. And LA was throwing together these groups of just all off-ball defenders that aren't strong on the ball, and stacking all of that together resulted in so many like situations where you have a leaky perimeter, and then also these guys aren't great rim protectors. And so you had constant breakdowns and weren't able to make up for it with dominant rim protection. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. So like the LeBron, Rui, Ayton front court, you brought up the kind of 50-50 luck adjustments. Looking at the ones I have on my end, were like fully luck adjusted and accounting for the shooter and accounting for the shot quality, not just league average numbers. It's pretty much the same results. So it's, yeah, I would love to see them pivot away from that. I think LaRavia adds an on-ball defender to the bunch that I think is the best KD option in this series. So that will be a swap I'm interested in keeping an eye out for. Rui does a pretty good job of boxing out. He's not a good individual rebounder defensively, but how quickly does JJ swap the starting group? I think is something to keep an eye on.
I don't get like. I just don't get it. I like they had the start of the season. That lineup was bad. I think the low light for me was JJ went back to it briefly. Remember that game in Brooklyn? They go to that lineup to close the second half. It's 2 minutes, but they get outscored. They give up a 7-0 run against Brooklyn. And I'm just like, stop playing this lineup. Like I do not understand it. And obviously that's with Luka and Austin, but I think the weakness of that lineup, in my opinion, was the front court and just the awkward fit of those 3 guys together, honestly, on both sides of the ball, because it's not like they were crushing it offensively either. So I just think that they tried that for like almost 40 games or whatever. It did not work. They went away from it. The Marcus starting group crushed it. And a big part of it was splitting that front line up. And then JJ is seemingly going back to that front line that just, I don't think it's going to work together. So we'll see. But I just don't believe in that trio together. And if they're all starting playing 34, 36 minutes at a minimum, which it seems like they might be, like, I just think you're really limiting, unless you're going super big lineups with Jake or Vando at like the 2, right? Or whatever. It's just, I'm really concerned with the overall defense and rebounding with those 3 out there together, but we shall see. So now we are here. We are ready for our series prediction. This is the 3rd time we have done this. We've both gone 0 for 2, and we've both been a little too high on the Lakers. I don't remember yours off the top of my head, but I picked Lakers over Nuggets in 7 in the 2023 Western Conference. 2024. Actually, no, in 2024, I actually picked Denver in 5. So I think I got that one right. But I think we also did 2023, and I picked Lakers over Nuggets in 7.
Yeah.
And then Minnesota, I picked the Lakers over the Wolves in 6. So I have missed 2 of the last 3 and have tended to be too optimistic on the Lakers side. But what is your prediction? Where are you at? And what are your closing thoughts here?
I don't believe, period. I don't believe that LA will do all of the things we talked about today. I question the decision-making from a lineup standpoint based on what we just talked about. I question the preparedness of this team for a postseason run based on the fact that they leaned into switching more than anybody and didn't get the reps in to work out the kinks, build in the complexity with drop coverage, with hedging, soft hedging, hard hedging, blitzing. There are many different ways to play defense, and the Lakers played like 1 or 1.5 kinds. And that concerns me. I don't like that Houston is best against that default setting for the team. And even if LA starts to press the right buttons, I question the ability for the team to execute something that they've almost never been asked to do. And so I am worried for a lot of reasons there. I think in general, the team's talent is severely lacking. If you were to pick 2 players that they were going to lose, I guess unless you were to pick like 2 centers maybe or something, but like losing Austin and LeBron, or losing Austin and Luka it's critical. It takes away so much of what you're able to do, so much of your bailout options, your set plays, your playmaking, your ball handling, and it really pigeonholes what's left to play. I don't trust JJ to make all of the adjustments yet. I hope he proves me wrong. Last playoffs, there wasn't actually a whole lot of chess playing. I was a little disappointed there. It was more 2 teams kind of kept doing the same thing game after game, and Minnesota came out on top. So I haven't seen him play chess. I've seen him play some good checkers, and it's just like a lack of opportunity thing. And I don't know that he's going to have too much opportunity again in this one because I have Houston in 5. I think this is going to be a short series. I hope that they can find these different edges, but even if you throw everything at the wall, as long as Houston is reasonable with their adjustments and doesn't get crushed from a shooting variance standpoint, they should win the series. It's just going to be a matter of how bad.
All fair and good points. So I have been burned by my Lakers optimism. So I'm going to say that maybe picking against them will work out in the Lakers' favor. That's my opening statement here. I went back and forth between Houston in 5 and 6. And honestly, that to me is more because I don't trust Houston than anything. And if there is a favorite going into one of these series that I could see imploding potentially and just unraveling and the underdog winning, I think this one might be the series I could see that. But we've this whole time been talking as if Luka and Austin are not going to be there. And I think that's the way you have to approach it from an analysis perspective. But I think this is the point for me where I get to like, there is some chance that one or both come back. I would say right now it's on the low side, and you also have to factor in if either guy comes back, they're probably on a minutes restriction, and they're probably at best like 80% of what they were pre-injury. Maybe they can get to even like 90%, but it's. I do not see a scenario in which Luka misses like 3 to 4 weeks of a hamstring injury, comes back, plays 40 minutes, and looks like the best player or best offensive player in the world. That maybe that happens, but I would be very shocked and stunned by that, right? So the way that this would probably go would be, even if Luka returns by game 4 on like the optimistic side, he will be on a minutes restriction, and there will be some adjustment period for him physically to start to look like himself again. So with all that said, I am going Rockets in 6. If you told me that, with the caveat that if Luka and Austin are out the full series, I would go Rockets in 5. I am like aggregating here a little bit of, I think there's a decent chance one of them is back at some point, and that could help the Lakers maybe win a game to extend it. But the sad part of this is like, if they were just healthy, and the Lakers wouldn't be playing them, because Lakers, I think, would have beaten Dallas and been the 3 seed. They would have been playing Minnesota in round 1. But let's just say Luka and Austin were magically healthy for this series. I'd probably pick the Lakers in 5. Like, it would swing the series that dramatically for me, where I'd probably go Lakers in 5, like 6 at the most, but probably 5. And I think this just comes down to, if you go team by team in the playoffs, take the top 2 scorers off of any of those teams, and with the exception of maybe OKC and Boston, that team is probably losing in round 1. Like, they'd be a heavy underdog. Like Cade and Jalen Duren, or Tatum and Brown, or Jokic and Murray, Wemby and Fox. Like, I think it's kind of as simple as that. The Lakers lost, just look at the season series, almost 50 points and 12 assists and 35 shots and 13 free throw attempts. Like, that's so much offense and firepower and usage that I don't want to overcomplicate this. Like, they're just at a massive talent and offensive deficit right now. So if you tell me Luka and Austin are out the full time, I will go Lakers in 5, but I am aggregating here and will say, I think they return, but they're not quite themselves. Maybe that gives LA a boost to win a game. But right now I'm going Rockets in 6. If Luka comes back game 3 or something, then I think that flips this, and maybe the Lakers can win this in like 7. But barring Luka coming back by like game 3 or game 4 at the latest, I have a really tough time seeing the Lakers winning the series.
Yeah, I think the variable of when they come back and then how healthy they are it's huge. I'm mostly just assuming they won't be back, or be back and effective enough to make a difference. I think back to a season ago when like Luka was very clearly limited in one game defensively, and it was real bad. LeBron was limited. Like Austin, I think as well, was hurt, right? Like these guys, they can be the superheroes when they're healthy, but it takes a lot to be able to come back from an injury, have no real ramp up, and then play a good defensive team with some elite perimeter defenders out there and some on-ball guys. And even if you do insert one of Luka or Austin back, Houston still has the guns. They've got 2 to 3 decent wing stoppers. They've got a decent point of attack guy. Like, they're ready for it. It's not like they're suddenly overmatched. Now, I think if LA had all 3 of theirs and they're healthy, I agree with you. I would pick LA easily in the series. I find it tough to get there, and I have no medical insight or inside information to push me off of, frankly, just being skeptical at this point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he comes back and the Spain trip does him wonders. I just think we have a history here of, the Aaron Gordon situation was different because he had aggravated it and then just played on it would be like if Luka just played right after the OKC game, like he would have, of course, been like physically compromised. But I think the Lakers have to take the long view here of James Harden a few years ago was dealing with a similar injury, played through it, and he was almost like not the same player for a couple of years. You've seen J-Dub and Aaron Gordon deal with hamstring stuff last year, try to play through it and have setbacks, and now they've been dealing with the same stuff all season. So it's like there's this sobering reality, I think, also of LA dropping into the 4-5. It's like if you could somehow find a way to beat Houston and Luka comes back, there's been several instances this season where guys came back from a hamstring injury and were re-injured within 2 weeks. So even if you get through the series, he could still get injured in the beginning of the next series. And then that next series would be OKC, where the Lakers have lost to them by 30 plus 3 times already. I don't see a universe in which they get more than a game against OKC, and that's like very optimistic. So it's like you're setting yourself up to win the first series, get absolutely blasted in the second series, and you're risking Luka potentially re-aggravating that and that being a factor going into next season and that affecting your next season. So it's like, I think they're going to be more cautious than has been maybe out there, and it's going to be like him having to be much closer to 100% than like rushing it back for a game 3 or something like that. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of fluidity here over the next couple of weeks with where like how the series starts and what type of progress he's able to make. But I just think they got to be really careful with this, because this is not the type of injury to mess around with. And the worst case scenario would be like you get past Houston, he re-aggravates it against OKC, and now he's not ready for like opening night next season, or he's like managing this to start next season. That would be a disaster, like in my opinion. So got to be careful with the Luka return. And also Austin, although I think Austin's, there's less fear of it maybe affecting him next season. It's more of just like, does he re-tear it or make it worse? With Luka, this could be a recurring thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd take the bigger picture view. If you look at just like percentage-wise, what does forcing them back, or not forcing, but rushing them back early, how much does it change your title odds? It's going to be minuscule. And so if there's a 30% chance that it impacts opening day next year, then it's probably not worth it.
I think LA's title path was the 3 seed, and the second they lost that, which was after these injuries, like that's when that shifted dramatically. But Tim, we said before the show we'd go an hour. We went an hour 41. We can't help ourselves. But anything you want to plug before we get out of here, other than your X account, which I will be linking in the show notes, BBall Index, which I will also be linking in the show notes, and the Lakers Exceptionalism pod. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, I think those are the 3. If you're interested in the X's and O's side of things, check out the Lakers Exceptionalism Discord. We've got you can check out my scheme tracking spreadsheet. Some of the stats that I referenced today were from literally like watching every play of every game and hand logging, what play did the team run? How well did it go? Who was on the court? What coverage did the defense play? Over, 7,500 plays this season. So I think I've grinded film the most of anyone I can think of that doesn't work for the team, and at times it's been great, at times it's been miserable. But you can see the fruits of that labor there. I also have 24 hours of recorded X's and O's content. If you're like, hey, what's a hammer screen, or what are some drop beaters, or things like that, from A to Z, from most beginner to getting into some expert stuff, that is all in there as well. I think it's like $10 a month or something like that. You can get in, consume it all, and then cancel if you want to. But check that out. I also do bonus pods. We haven't been doing the public pods lately, but I have a pod up a day on this series, one previewing the offense, one previewing the defense. Tomorrow's is going through a mailbag, talking predictions and a couple other things. And then I'll have pods up in between each game to talk through adjustments, which this is my favorite time of year. Game 1's always the most nervous because I don't know how the chessboard will be set up. But once it's set up, it's a lot of fun to talk about. All right, this is what they did. Here's how you counter it. And if we counter it this way, this is how we can expect them to adjust, and kind of digging down the rabbit hole of the different paths. So it's my favorite time of year. I'm hoping it lasts more than 5 games. I tried to pick with my head this time. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But happy to be here, and let's go Lakers.
We overestimated the Lakers before, so maybe we're underestimating them, and they're going to prove us wrong and win this in 7 or maybe even fewer games than that. But Tim, this was fun. This is, as I said at the top, my favorite podcast of the year. Hope we get to do another one of these previewing the OKC series, which will that one will be less optimistic. But I'm looking forward to seeing how things play out on Saturday. We have the full schedule now, so can plan accordingly over the next couple of weeks. But appreciate you. Shout out to everybody in the chat. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. On the road to 35,000 subscribers by the end of April. It would really mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. with Lakers Collective, and then afterward, going live after Lakers practice. I will talk to you all then.